This is the 2023 edition of George T. Stagg coming in at 135 proof. And this is Stagg Junior batch 22A coming in at 132.2 proof. They're both made with Buffalo Trace's mash bill number 1, the low rye mash bill, but there's a difference primarily in age. The 2023 GTS is aged 15 and a half years, and although there's no age statement, it seems that most of the information that I could get says that the Stagg Junior 22A is somewhere between 7 and 10 years of age. So which one do I like better? And it's more than just, I think, an academic exercise, because let's talk street price, because I don't know anybody that gets this stuff, maybe unless it falls off a truck, who gets this stuff at MSRP. So street price, let's say if you go to a secondary group, you're going to be looking at probably $700, $750 for this. Thankfully, I didn't pay that much. So if my wife is watching, I didn't pay that much. But that's what street price is. So figure, let's say $750 for a round number. And this one's street price, you see Stagg around a little bit more, Stagg Junior around a little bit more often, but you're probably looking at, again, depending how lucky you get, a low end maybe 150, a high up maybe 250 in that range. I have seen them come down recently in price around 199. So let's just say for this discussion, $750 street price versus approximately $200 street price. So the question is that extra age, the 15 and a half year age, does it make that much of a difference? So I've got two glasses here. And I'm not going to randomize them this time because that's kind of not the point. In fact, I kind of want to know what each of these is. Now, obviously, that does put some selection bias into the process, but be that as it may. All right, so let's go in for the aroma first. So the Stagg Junior, and by the way, I mean, I've had both of these. They're both freaking delicious. The Stagg Junior 22A is, of the expressions I've had, maybe 3 or 4, is by far my favorite. It's got a beautiful nose. I always get cherry cola on this. Some nice vanilla too. You know, that beautiful tannic oak, but it's really, and it's surprising for its proof, it's not, burning my nose hairs either. So it's got a nice, beautiful aroma. You can certainly tell that there's some ethanol there, but it's not ethanol forward. But a lot of cherry, that oak, some vanilla. There's also some of those like chocolate notes, and it's like, no, not a Hershey bar kind of chocolate. It's more like, think of like, bittersweet, like baking chocolate, that sort of dark richness. Overall, beautiful nose. But definitely, fundamentally, fruity, kind of sweet. So now let's go to the GTS. And this bottle's been open just 24 hours, so I mean, I'm not sure if there's some issue. Maybe it needs to open up a little bit, but it's not a fresh crack either. All right, so this is darker. Darker? What does darker mean? So I'm not getting as much of the brighter fruity notes. Can't use the word in the definition, right? So I'm not getting as much of the fruity, let's say maybe the cherry notes that I was getting on the Stagg Junior. This is more towards that deep bittersweet chocolate, maybe some coffee notes, but still a nice dose of vanilla. I'm not picking up as much cherry on this. If there's any fruit at all, it's going to be more of like a darker, like a plum, maybe something like that, like stone fruit. Actually a big difference. But again, that makes sense to me. Obviously, this is twice as long in the barrel. So I think it would be natural to expect that it's going to have more of that like charred oak influence. Having said that, I've also done some research to say that when they barrel this George T. Stagg, 75% of the original volume of that barrel has been lost to evaporation. So you're talking about a very concentrated bourbon as well here. And you can definitely get that on the nose. But, not as, it's not dramatic. And again, I'm not cheating here, but I know which is which. But interesting. All right, so on the nose, I got to tell you, probably for me, just for my palate, I probably would give a little bit of an edge to the Stagg Junior, simply because I tend to like things a little brighter and sweeter. And again, this is freaking unbelievable. But of the two of those, if I had to pick, I'd probably give a slight edge to the Stagg Junior. So let's do a tasting. So let's do it in the opposite order. Let's taste the GTS first. Ooh, that is some beautiful heat there. People can't stand me smacking my lips, but it's hard not to smack my lips on this. But wow, that just blossoms again into these dark, chocolatey, oaky, but really, and there's some tannins there. You know, some of that drying effect, like if you think of like a Cabernet, but not bitter, which is why I think this is just a beautiful pour. It's complex, rich, a lot of vanilla there too. I think you need a second sip here before I go on to the Stagg Junior. Super nice. Again, it's oaky, but it's oaky, but it's not like furniture oak. Gives me hiccups too. It's again, it's drying, it's tannic, but that's just beautiful, dark and rich. I don't have any water. We'll go in for a couple of unsalted almonds here to cleanse. But super delicious. $750 delicious. I'll leave that up to you to decide. To me, probably not. You know, go to a restaurant. I actually was in New Orleans. I had a pour of this for like $22, an ounce and a half pour. That was worth it. um, it's a lot of money to spend. If you've got unlimited money, yeah, get a case of it. But you know, for us regular guys, you know, it's something to think about. But it's certainly delicious. And obviously, if you have an uncle in the business and you can get this at a reasonable price, and you know, all day long, it's delicious. All right, those almonds have cleared. Let's go into this. And by the way, I think unsalted roasted almonds are a great little nibbler when you're doing like a whiskey tasting by yourself or with your friends, because I think the almonds kind of like it's sort of like that woody, little bit of that chalky thing, and I think it kind of complements a whiskey tasting. I don't think salt is good, so unsalted and roasted is the way to go. All right, so let's get definitely more of a sweetness on the nose here, which I like. Again, got to give that a nice Kentucky chew. It's delicious too. But as you would expect, I mean, I think there's no surprises here. It's still oaky, but it's brighter, it's sweeter. There's still some nice tannins on the back end, um, but not quite as much of that like dark oak influence that you get on the GTS. It starts off with more sweetness and vanilla, but it quickly goes dry in a nice way. A nice dry, oily mouthfeel, kind of the flavor just kind of coats your mouth. It's fantastic too. But there is much more complexity, subtle flavors. Maybe a little coffee in there. There's another note. Can't quite pick that out. Yeah, I'm not even sure what that is. Um, so if I had to pick one, so you know, it's hard to pick one. They're both delicious. Having said that, as beautiful as this GTS is, I think I'm going to give the nod to the Stagg Junior because again, it's got a little bit more of that cherry. It's got the cherry cola flavor, which just to me, that's kind of what suits my palate. Like for example, like I did a blind tasting between Russell's Reserve 15 and the Russell's Single Rickhouse. And I actually picked the Single Rickhouse for the same reason. The Russell's Reserve 15, again, had that dark, oaky, influence. But the Single Rickhouse to me had more like caramel and flavors, which just suits my palate better. So, this is, I'm not saying necessarily that this is the gospel, but for the price, if let's round up, let's do some rounder numbers. So let's say this is like 800 on the street, and this is 200 on the street. You can get 2, 4, 6, 8. You can get 4 of these. That my math is bad. I would have to say that, let's put it this way: if you have a Stagg Junior on your shelf and you're jonesing for a GTS and you can't find one, this is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful bourbon, and you shouldn't feel bad about it. So what's my advice? You try before you buy. Go to a fine restaurant, see if you can grab a pour of this, if you have a friend who's got one open. But this Stagg Junior is no slouch. Now, let's just do one more thing, since this is, I'm not as versed on YouTube as I am on other platforms, but I have a little bit more time to talk here. Let's pull in one more mash bill number 2 product. Mash bill number 1, excuse me, mash bill number 1 product. And this is Benchmark Foolproof. I think it's supposed to be 4 years old. Same mash bill. Now, certainly, you would not expect this to have anywhere near the complexity of either of these, but this is $22 a bottle. And I've seen lots of videos on this, so I'm not breaking any new ground here, but since I got it out there for fun, let's see how that Benchmark Foolproof. That's interesting. It's so interesting because like you can just smell the progression. It's a great exercise, I think, in sort of like appreciating what age does to a bourbon. So this has much lighter, 125 proof, much lighter aromas, but still has some beautiful baking spice. Doesn't have the cherry. You go from the Benchmark Foolproof to the Stagg Junior, and the Stagg Junior just blasts with like cherry cola. Wow, that's crazy. And then you go to the GTS, and again, just, it's, lacquered wood, and maybe you think, oh, lacquered wood sounds disgusting, but in the best possible way, that beautiful wood influence. Let's see what it tastes like. I gotta tell you, it's tasty, but certainly, as you would expect, doesn't have that depth and complexity of the other two. But, as a daily sipper, that's no slouch. For the price, 125 proof mash bill number 1 product for $22, and you get that in Jersey. They don't have them in New York. There's nothing at all that is bad about Benchmark Foolproof. And, of the 3 of them, again, it's kind of like buying a watch or buying a suit. Like you can go out and get like a really nice Armani suit and spend a ton of money, and it's just like finely made and fine materials and all that kind of stuff. But there's something about, going to like, it used to be Sims or like Filene's Bargain Basement and finding a Brooks Brothers suit for like $99 or, something like that. And I think that's exactly what you have here. They're all good in their own way. Certainly, the Benchmark's just not in the league of these other two, but it's a tasty sip for the price. And if you want to kind of get into Buffalo Trace Mash Bill number 1 and not break the bank, it's just something interesting to consider. But you taste these in the progression, and you can definitely see like how age influences the same recipe. So kind of cool. So let me know what you think. Again, I haven't done a lot of these long form videos on YouTube, but let me know what you're thinking. I'd love to hear your comments. And again, if you're watching this, I'd love if you'd give me a follow too. You can follow me on Instagram at The Real Bourbon Barry, and TikTok at Bourbon Barry too. But again, I appreciate a follow here as well on YouTube. Anyway, I appreciate you guys watching. And as always, I'm just a regular guy sipping whiskey. Thanks for watching.